the other cool thing this does mentally is if I get to the checkout and I only have one option, what's my choice? It's either buy or don't buy, right? But you change the psychology of the buying process when it's like, oh, which one do I want to choose?
Yep.
And now there's multiple ways to facilitate that sell. And that option of not buying at all kind of becomes a distant memory because they're just trying to pick the one that makes the most sense.
Welcome, everybody, to the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. We're your hosts, Clint Reid, here with Aaron Bezzant for another fun-filled day. But what's going to be fun about this episode today is actually episode 1 of 4. We're going to have a 4-part series talking just about picking your international shipping carrier. Of course, Aaron and I considered doing this in one, and which, you could have sat here for 2 hours, but we're going to do our best to make these a little more bite-sized. We've had some feedback, of which if Aaron and I sit in a room, what are the chances something's going to get, a conversation is going to be done within like 10 minutes? Extremely low. But we're going to do our best to, I think, make these a little more bite-sized and hopefully, some big takeaways. Now, Aaron, you just had a shipment you were dealing with, right? I would love to hear about the shipment come from. I think it's kind of relevant to today's episode, which today's going to be about the objective. Like, what are you trying to do? That is part 1. What's the objective?
No, and this is really good because I just had a personal experience with ordering some parts online. And to introduce the topic of what parts I ordered, I want to start with a joke. Why can't bicycles stand up on their own?
I don't know.
They're too tired.
Okay. Well,
all right.
I wasn't expecting it, so that was a lot funnier than I was planning.
All right. So, I've been shopping around. I've got 8 kids. Okay. Love to ride bicycles. A bunch of them do, but I've got a little toddler that she just wants to be out doing everything with me. And pulling a bike trailer on some of the trails around here on a mountain bike doesn't work very well. So I wanted to buy a little seat where she can sit shotgun with me when I take like my 8 and my 10-year-old out and stuff. There's a few options out there. I kind of narrowed it down to the one I wanted, and I go to buy it, and everywhere I go, it's like I pretty much have to buy it direct from the manufacturer, which is not in America. It's in Canada. And I'm like, so I go through the checkout. I'm like, okay, I can buy from Canada. It's okay. And I'm a little savvy. I know duty and taxes aren't going to be much of an issue because we've got such a high de minimis. This is below the de minimis. But I go to checkout and it's like $25 in shipping. I'm like, oh, let me go shop around. So I go to Amazon. Oh, there it is on Amazon. $25 in shipping being sold from the manufacturer on Amazon, right?
Uh-huh.
I really didn't have any choices, so I had to bite the bullet, pay my $25 in shipping, and have that bike part shipped to me. And it's on its way right now, so I'm really excited. It should be here sometime this week. And they shipped it via Canada Post.
They made some money on that.
It's on its way. I'm excited. I hope it works. So it's kind of fun that we get to talk now about shipping costs because I just went through that experience as a buyer. And when I got to checkout, I'm like, I'm an American. I don't want to pay shipping costs. Everything's supposed to be free shipping because I'm Amazon Prime, right? That's what I'm used to. But I was still willing to pay it because I'm going to look at the total cost and also my options. And this product made sense for me to pay those shipping costs. But it did give me pause when I had to pay $25 in shipping.
Yeah. Well, we had in studio, Intuitive Shipping was here, the founders, and we talked about everything is related to what helps convert shoppers and and also how to ensure you don't lose a lot of money if you're going to be doing offering different shipping options at checkout, dimension weight, all that. Anyway, different episode. Go listen to that episode. It's actually extremely helpful. But I would say reference that when you're looking at how to display shipping options at checkout. But now you need to pick a carrier, right? So the objective. When you're choosing the right shipping partner, right? It's an integral part to your cross-border strategy. So what would you say are a few things that are the main components of doing this if you're going to go out there and pick.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you referenced the intuitive shipping podcast. That's more about how you message, how you display costs and how that impacts things. But ultimately that package has to move. And you've got to work with a provider that can meet your customer expectations. And I'd say customers are going to be sensitive to cost. Obviously, I just talked about that. They're going to be sensitive to speed and how fast they can get it. And then another element, which I think is important, which is a combination of the two, is give them a choice. Don't just give them a one-size-fits-all approach to that, because if so, it may or may not meet their needs. So they may be willing to pay more to get it faster, or they may be willing to wait a little bit to save some money, which I actually had that in the cart. There was two options. One was express, one wasn't. I told myself I was going to be patient. And so I waited.
How much was the express one?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. It was maybe $10, $15 more, something like that. But it was like, I knew it was coming from Canada and I'd get it here this week. I'm like, all right, that's good enough for me. So,
well, shipping costs internationally, it is different. I mean, they make up typically sometimes 15, 20% of the cart total, and lowering that is extremely important. What I'll give this, see if I still have this quote up. I think I do. So, Jeff Bezos, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard of him.
Heard of this guy?
I've heard of him. Yep.
I remember listening to him on a podcast, and I found I think he's talked about this quote kind of multiple times, but he said, "In our retail business, we know that customers want low prices, and I know that's going to be true 10 years from now. They want fast delivery, they want vast selection. It's impossible to imagine a future 10 years from now where a customer comes up and says, 'Jeff, I love Amazon. I wish the prices were a little higher. I love Amazon. I just wish you'd deliver a little slower.'" And I think that this, and actually the third one, which was vast, right? A vast selection. That's kind of the options you're talking about, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
What we're talking about today will be true 10 years from now as well, that these are the things customers are looking for and now, talking about that cost, obviously it is a huge portion of the international order. And lowering it, I think before we talk about lowering it, we're going to kind of, we're going to do that in just a little bit. I think you have to understand like what to lower, right? Because there's the total cost is a lot of different things. What about speed? That's your second one.
Mm-hmm. You've got to understand what your customers' needs are. And there's some really slow options out there internationally, and there's some really fast ones. And there's certain products where, look, I think everyone's a procrastinator to a point, right? Or they have a last minute thing that comes up that they need to get it fast, and they're willing to pay a premium to do that. And so you've got services that can ship internationally at the same kind of speed that you can get stuff domestically. I mean, your express carriers, your DHLs, your FedExes, and your UPSs, they have express services that are 1 to 3 days to many, many countries in the world.
Well, especially Canada, right?
Especially Canada.
You can get something there in a day or two, just like you can in the US.
Yep.
And I think talking about speed before we kind of get to choice, I think something important to point out is there are services that are date specific that are out there with the express carriers, UPS, FedEx, DHL, where there will be an assigned delivery date. They used to guarantee the date, but they don't.
Not so much. That's kind of
internationally. Ever since COVID, they turned it off.
Yeah,
because I had a shipment for my family business that went to like Spain, and it took like 8 days with an express carrier. I will not say their name, and I was like, "Can I even get a refund on this?
So on the delivery date, do they put an asterisk, and then down in the bottom they just put the word "ish"?
It just said, due to COVID-19, we're still not guaranteeing our,
everything. It'll be there by April 24th ish.
So I would say that you can display. I wouldn't deter you from trying to display a estimated delivery date, an actual date at checkout for the speed when you have an express carrier. Once you start getting outside the express carriers, you can still have maybe a date range or a transit time, but communicating the speed is as important as having speed, right? So I think when you say cost and then speed, obviously there's a trade-off depending on if you want something really low cost, it's probably going to be slower.
Mm-hmm. I think another important aspect on speed is that's a deal breaker for some customers. Like if it's like me, like, hey, I want to get this part to have for future things, great. But when there's like a hard deadline of like, I need this for this event or this thing that's going on, and you can't get it there, and you don't have an option to get it there in that time, they're not buying. Period.
So this person that had ordered like this ladybug costume in Spain because we sell costumes.
Okay,
and she's like, and it's like it's not going to be here in time for my event, and it's just your heart sinks because you're right. In some cases, you need that speed, and because this is a new business that we bought, I didn't have a lot of options really. Like, Zonos hasn't been fully installed and everything, and so there's still some fine tuning that needs to get done here. But I think she would have paid another $10 to $20 for a more reliable service level, probably than the one she had picked to get there on time. And all I needed to do was give her the option. So talk to me about like what does that mean? Is something I know you're passionate about is giving customers a choice. What would those look like in a checkout?
Yeah. So that doesn't mean give them 15 choices, right? I've seen that at checkouts. Hey, give them 2 to 3 options with different service levels and costs, and you're probably good. If you add another 1 or 2 on there for specific reasons, that's fine. But don't overwhelm them at checkout. But give them the option to say, hey, I pre-planned well in advance for this event, and I can wait another week to save myself $15. Or for those that procrastinate, they can pay the extra to get it there in time. And guess what? Both of those customers are going to be happy. If you only give one option because you're just so cost focused or so service focused, you're going to alienate one of them, and you're going to get fewer orders.
I think 2's low. I think 3's decent. I don't think it's terrible to have 4 or 5 even sometimes, but because in the intuitive shipping episode that we had, Canadians see UPS and they're like, they get super nervous, especially if duties and taxes aren't included. So they do care who it's shipping with a lot of times. They know who their local, they care if it's coming post, possibly, to avoid some duties and taxes, or for better, easier clearance and delivery. And so I think that, and we've had some customers that list a ton and are super successful. So I think know your customer, know what you're trying to achieve. But yeah, you need choices. It should not be singular here.
At a minimum, you need at least 2. You need at least 1 that's focused on cost and at least 1 that's focused on speed. I agree. That's probably you probably should offer a little more than that. But you at least need to give them a choice. And the other cool thing this does mentally is if I get to the checkout and I only have one option, what's my choice? It's either buy or don't buy, right? But you change the psychology of the buying process when it's like, oh, which one do I want to choose?
Yeah.
And now there's multiple ways to facilitate that sell. And that option of not buying at all kind of becomes a distant memory because they're just trying to pick the one that makes the most sense.
So did $25 look cheaper when you saw it next to the $40
yes,
option?
It does.
It does.
It absolutely does.
Because it is cheaper.
It puts everything into perspective. Whereas if I only saw 25, I'd be like, forget that. But I'm like, oh, this one, I'm going to save myself money. And it's like when my wife goes shopping and she uses a discount or a coupon and she's like, I saved $50 today. But I'm like, yeah, but you spent $150, right? But she's focused on what she's saved. Right. So yeah, there's definitely something that can be had with that.
So help me understand these shipping costs. What makes up these shipping costs and how impactful they can be? Like, what are some of the things that come to your mind?
Oh, we're talking fees and
yeah. Because look, we already hit
this
on.
Is huge.
We talked about what you need to choose, what you need to worry about: cost, speed, and choice. Now help me understand my international shipping costs and.
Yeah. So this is, let's throw it out there that there's a few different players in the industry, which we'll touch on in a second. Okay. I'm going to talk specifically to the ones everybody knows, which is the express carriers. They're going to have fuel surcharges, residential surcharges. Fuel first off moves with the price of jet fuel.
Right.
So it's variable.
Yep. And when you say express carriers, just so I know you know who that is.
Brown, purple, yellow, right?
Okay.
UPS,
FedEx,
DHL.
Yes.
Those are kind of the three main ones. And they all kind of play the copycat game with each other. Now, to be clear, DHL doesn't have a domestic service here in the U.S., but they do have services in other parts of the world that are useful. So, fuel, residential, you'll often see that where they charge you an extra fee to deliver to a house because for them it's less efficient than delivering to businesses.
Is that just Canada specific typically, or do you see it everywhere?
It's becoming more prevalent. It used to be internationally they didn't have it at all.
Long time.
And then you started seeing it creep into Canada. And I will say the other trick is some of the carriers are better at applying it than others.
Yeah.
And we have a whole episode on carrier fees too, by the way.
Yeah, listen to that episode. It's great.
But remote area surcharges can be huge. So this is if you go, we have that here in in domestic shipments too, and it's like a matter of a few dollars. But when we're talking internationally, it can be like $30. Like it's huge. If they have to go deliver to someone out in the bush, they're going to charge you extra versus someone in the city. And all of these are negotiable, by the way.
And residential is probably just real quick because $30 possibly remote area. I mean, in that range. Residential is what?
A few bucks.
$4 or $5, maybe.
Yeah.
3, 5. Yeah.
Large package surcharges. Those are if you sell big, bulky items and you're over certain dimensions. Most people in e-commerce don't hit that, but if there's certain types of products, you absolutely would, and they're really expensive.
Would that would a tire be considered large package?
A tire, what size tire? Right?
I don't know. Yeah.
A big one. Yes. Probably a bigger tire would. There can be extra handling charges as well.
Yeah,
if it's not in a box.
Yeah, you've dealt with that in your past life too.
Absolutely. If you're selling canoes, you're definitely going to get hit with some extra handling charges, and you're probably not going to justify selling a single canoe across border.
You know what though? It depends on your brand, right? If you have a strong brand,
true. Well, okay. Like with what I bought,
I visited a company that's a get a U.S. address company, and the amount of things and how much people would pay to ship this stuff internationally was completely absurd. And there are they're shipping to a queen somewhere. So if you have a strong brand, you might be surprised.
You know what? There's an angle of this. I feel like we're being Debbie Downer, which is probably not the right approach of if you don't get good shipping costs, no one's going to buy, because it's not the same as domestic either, because in certain parts of the world too, they just can't get the products any other way, and they're willing to pay extra for it.
Yeah.
Good point on that. So
right, what else?
Big one is dimensional weight.
What is that? What is dimensional weight?
So they introduced this years ago. If I were to ship this laptop, I don't know how much a laptop weigh. A pound or two, something like that. I don't know what it is. A couple pounds, whatever. But I put it in a box that's big with lots of extra airspace and fill it full of packaging. They have a way to take the dimension of the box, and they have some math where they take the length and the width and the height and divide it by a dim factor. And typical one for international is 139. And they come up with this dimensional weight, this fictitious weight number based on that's relative to the size of the box. And they say, okay, is that bigger than the 2-pound laptop? If so, they're going to bill you off the dimensions of the box and not the actual weight of the box. So that's really relevant. And that dim factor can fluctuate and can be negotiated, but can have a huge impact. Now, if you're shipping everything in envelopes or you have really heavy, dense products and tightly packed, it's probably not going to affect you.
So dim factor 139 is the standard dim factor, and if a dim factor going from 139 to 166 to in the 190s or something like that, I mean you're dropping 1 to 2 pounds in terms of total volumetric weight, and so that's
the bigger the box, the bigger the impact.
Yes. So in terms of cost,
it's huge.
That's a huge cost savings.
And I'll tell you, or back when I was dealing with a lot of shipping costs, luckily we were able to have the volume to negotiate a good dim factor. But you know how every year the carriers come out with their rate increases? They also do some games to increase their revenue without even increase, and they wouldn't even have to increase the rate. One of them was there was a time there where they kept dropping the dim factor. Every year, it seemed like because it used to be 194 was your standard domestic, and all of a sudden it went to 166, and international used to be 166, and it went to 139, and so it's super impactful and very much worth paying attention to if you ship larger, lightweight items. And then a big one, another one to think about is minimum package charges.
But Aaron, I have an 80% discount.
All that will happen so a minimum package charge is saying, hey, we'll discount everything, but we have to charge at least X amount on
we have a floor.
Package.
There's a floor.
If you have an 80% discount, that means you're probably going to charge the same amount on every package from 1 pound to 20 pounds, right? Which is going to be way too much for you to be competitive with a 1 pound package.
So I have a question for you. Of these fees, what of these are negotiable?
All of them.
Fuel?
Very hard.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's negotiable.
But right. Okay.
Very difficult to do that, though.
Yeah,
I wouldn't focus on that one. I'd focus on the others way before that.
Right. I think generally knowing, know your product and know what is going to have the biggest impact.
Yep.
If you're selling hunting, equipment or your outdoor, that kind of stuff, the remote area surcharge might be a really big one that you want to worry about. If you're selling, parts and bumpers and large package surcharge, you might be worried about that, but not so much worried about the remote area surcharge. So I think it's really important to know where it's going. Any other thoughts on the fees before we jump to other types of fees besides shipping fees that are negotiable?
I think that's good. A lot of these fees are the same type of fees you're going to deal with domestically. So I think if you're used to kind of looking at carrier fees, you're going to be used to dealing with this stuff. Just know that internationally, it's often much more expensive when those fees come into play.
Okay. Duties and tax. Mm-hmm. There's fees as well. We've talked. Go listen to our other episode on international carrier fees. But talk to me a little bit about understanding the difference between DDP and DDU or DAP. Duties, taxes, unpaid, which we both agree is more intuitive when duties, taxes paid, duties, taxes unpaid. But DAP, delivered at place, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, got it right.
You got it.
But that's a term that a lot of people use instead of using DDU. What are some of the fees here, and what do I need to worry about?
Okay, so let's brief lesson on that package. What happens with the package? It comes through. Duty and taxes get assessed, and actually get paid by whoever's clearing that. Is the typical model here. Then those duty and taxes have to get billed to somebody. If it's DDU, that means they're going to bill your customer, the shopper. And even if you put a big disclaimer on your website that says, hey, it's on you, shopper, you figure out what your duty and taxes are. What they don't really know, and this references back to why Canadians might be a little suspect on UPS, because ground services to Canada have a lot of extra fees on top of the duty and taxes. The carrier is collecting. They might have collection fees, disbursement fees, which are things for them advancing the money and paying it on your behalf and then having to collect from you. All of those things are typically going to be charged at the published rate, which is retail pricing, no discount, and can often be more than even the duty and tax.
And a collect on delivery fee too.
Yep.
When it's going.
Yep.
DDU. So those are not.
You don't have much control over that, and you just pissed off a customer.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you get control over this?
That's where surface that stuff at checkout, and you send it DDP.
Yep.
Which means the duty and taxes, instead of them billing your shopper, they turn around and bill it back to you or a third party like Zonos, and then those fees can be negotiated and reduced from what would have been charged. So it actually becomes cheaper to send it DDP than DDU.
Yeah, they're not all easy to negotiate. Sometimes it's actually pretty hard. The $15 fee though that UPS has, which is a duty and tax forwarding surcharge, I don't want to dive in. Just get it negotiated and go listen to the other episode.
And by the way, that's where plug Zonos customers that are using our services, we will discount things for them.
Right. When you go to a service that specializes in something, typically what's going to come with that is some negotiated benefits that we have with some of the carriers. And yeah, we have some. We're not reselling shipping rates, but we have some negotiated benefits. And one of those is you're just going to walk in and get those discounted fees with us. where available. And pretty much we have some available with every single carrier, express carrier. Speaking of carriers, who are the players out there?
Yeah, I think this is where the next episode I think is going to.
We'll do a deep dive on this.
Deep dive into all of this. Let's just do an overview of it, though. I would say there's kind of 4 main buckets I would put the international carriers into. One's post. I've got an order coming through the post. I ordered it from Canada. They shipped it via Canada Post. It's going to then be handed off to United States Postal Service and delivered to my house.
And all the posts are collaborating with each other. Australia Post going to into Europe. It might get delivered by Law Post or, going to the UK, Royal Mail. All of these. That's when we say posts. There are more than just your post office in your country. There's posts all over the world, and they work together very closely on international shipments.
And posts are fantastic because they feel like they're on every street corner in every country. Right? Yeah. Everybody's familiar with where their post office is. And so that's a service that really any company can tap into if it makes sense for them.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk more about the post on the episode when we talk about for SMBs, but.
Integrators. That's just a fancy word for talking about, hey, DHL, UPS, FedEx, those types of carriers that really own all their own assets and they own the whole network.
Yep.
And they have really good service.
Integrator picks it up and they do the delivery, the same company.
Yep. And then this is
what integrators by far, which we all know, but it's the best service that you're going to get out there.
Yes.
It's kind of like Apple, right? Like the whole ecosystem is just the best product. It's in many ways, best of a lot of things because they just control everything. Integrators, but higher cost.
Yep. And they're also pretty accessible. I think in most countries, at least one of them is very something you're very familiar with. So, and then there's this group we call consolidators, and there's a ton of them out there, and their focus is creating low-cost e-commerce shipping solutions for shippers. The catch is they usually require some volume to tap into their network. But the cool thing about it is they usually don't own their assets, and they basically shop out all the different legs of the journey of your package and connect it all together so that package still gets from point A to point B. But they find ways to be creative, consolidate volume. That's why we call them consolidate, and hand it off to partners. And it's usually a network of partners to get that package to its final mile. So it might still be delivered by a post or by one of your main, a carrier in your area that well. But how it got there is through a network of partners that they chose to try to create the most efficient route possible.
Yeah, this is we work with a lot of these. So in our episode, when we talk about the actual carriers, like the landscape of carriers that are out there, which is going to be especially important in episode 2 coming up. Stay tuned because they're that if you want to know a lot, listen to that one. If you're not interested, you can, like, if you're a small business, they can probably skip that one, don't you think? I mean,
small business
doing, 10 pieces a week or something like that. Like, I mean, they could listen to some of the things in there might be relevant, but this is going to be those that really want to know what are my options out there to lower my cost. How are they different? That one's going to be a fun one.
Yep. And then I think the last one that often gets not thought of unless you're a bigger shipper, there's regional specific providers. Like, let's say you've got a ton of volume going into Canada. There's a company called Purolator, which is like the UPS of Canada. And they have sales people down here in the US trying to work with larger business and larger shippers that have a lot of volume to Canada to move those goods up north. Same thing if you've got a lot of volume going to Japan. You might work with Yamato just for Japan, and then you have to pick other providers outside of that. So there's some more creative ways that you can approach it if you kind of go market by market. A lot of times we think, I'm just going to hand it off my carrier. They're going to take care of the world with me, which is true in many cases. But if there's certain markets that are really important to you, there's some providers that are niche in those markets and could be a good choice.
So as we finish up here, talk to me a little bit about now evaluating these groups of carriers, kind of zooming out with the posts, the integrators, the express carriers, the consolidators, and the regional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first and foremost, this is I think standard. Understand your customers, understand your products, and what what things are going to be most important to you. Or do you have a lot of really big shipments? Then, you might, if your packages are large, there's certain carriers that might be better at handling large packages. But if you've got a lot of, lightweight, low value products, you might pick something different. And then understanding your customers, how can you make the cost and the service level the most attractive you can for them, and pick the providers that fit your product and your customer profiles the best. That's kind of the best the best approach I can say to if I want to give something generic, right?
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a general, hey, just understand your customers and what they want. Isn't that kind of basic business, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, this has been the first part of a 4-part series on picking your international shipping carrier. I'm excited for part 2, where we'll talk about the carriers at length. And then part 3, small businesses, doing not a ton of volume, because I think really that's going to be a totally different group than the last group we're going to talk to, which is enterprise. But I think we did a good job at being bite-sized today, and looking forward to doing the rest of these here with you, Aaron, on the exciting journey of picking your carrier.
I'm excited for it. Deep dives are always the most fun.
Yes, they are. Agreed.